9:30 class. This is his second semester with me. He is a PhD student in political science. And this is his second semester with me, second semester of the program. And he's going to talk to you a little bit based upon some of his experience working in the judiciary and his studies there about the judiciary. So let's hear it for Gary.
Everyone, thanks for having me. Everyone hear me all right? Perfect. Like Dr. Rowlett said, I am going to be lecturing today on the judiciary. The judiciary is a very complex and at times murky institution in our government. It is very important because it is one of the institutions which you will have the most day-to-day interactions with. And it is also important because the judiciary is what I would say is the whole of the philosophy of U.S. government. First, I have a question for you all. How have we discussed the judiciary branch so far?
I haven't talked much about it. We've only really been on studying Supreme Court cases and precedents of precedent.
Cases. Any particular one that come to mind?
Brown v. Board of Education, Plessy Ferguson, those are the only two.
Very important cases. And it's true. We mainly think of the judiciary from an institutional perspective through cases. And cases coming specifically from SCOTUS. Any other cases that you can think of?
Cases right here.
Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade. What other cases related to Roe v. Wade? The dogs. Dogs is the case. And from this, we will go to the poll question. For our past lectures, what has been, from our past lectures, in your opinion, what has been the most important SCOTUS decision? I only give you four options: Brown v. Board, Miranda v. Arizona, Roe v. Wade, and Citizens United. I would like to give you more, but I only have four options. The password again is court. Call on the case level. I'll give you a second to go and do that. I'd like to ask you a question real quick. Another question. And pay attention to this one, maybe on your essay or maybe in your exam. What are laws and why do we have them? Concept, we all know about it. Any guesses? Carter. Carter. Okay, one right over here.
I think laws are just like rules or regulations that keep our country safe and secure. So it's to regulate the citizens' actions.
Regulate citizens' actions, keep us safe. I hate speeding laws. Speeding laws, provide for it. Any other interpretations? I won't read all the things too long. Primarily, there are four functions of law: providing order and predictability to society, resolving disputes in between each other, protecting individuals and property, providing for the general welfare. These are laws that institute what obligations the government has to us. And probably one of the more important ones, protecting individual liberties. I'm bring up two types of laws. We have civil laws. These are laws that deal between disagreements between me and you, or me and anyone else. As an example, if Adam was to punch me, I would bring a civil suit against him for the assault, and I would seek damages, mainly the pain and suffering of Adam having hit me. So this would be a civil law. Likewise, there are criminal laws which are violations against the state itself. The state says you cannot harm each other. Therefore, Adam would also be liable to be prosecuted for assault under a criminal court. Now, there are sources of law. The main one, and the one that most of you are probably familiar with, are statutory laws. These are laws that are written down and codified and that are address the needs of society as a whole. Anyone have any examples of who would write these laws? Congress, the legislature. Anything else? There's one other. State. Yeah. And one that's not thought about very well, or thought about very much, is the executive branch. When Congress rights are very broad regulation, it is up to the bureaucracy to come up with regulations to enact what Congress asks them. These regulations are also examples of statutory law. Here's an example of a law that will come up later in the lecture. Pay close attention to it. From the Humboldt State Civil Code book, if a duck is convicted of assaulting a person in a park, they must pay damages to the person. So, what would this law be an example of? Considered civil or criminal? Civil. I would say civil would be correct. That's how I read it. Okay. There is another source of law, and this is called common law. Common law is a compilation of traditions, principles, and legal practices that are handed down from one generation of lawyers and judges to another. So, what is an example of common law? Mentioned it before.
Don't harm thy neighbor, don't feed, like stuff like that.
No. No. Any others? That's those more social conventions. Interesting topic in the discussion of law, but not today. Any others? Mentioned before in class. I asked about it earlier. Are you full? Court cases. Yes. SCOTUS decisions are common law. This common law is called case law. All case law and all federal law is ultimately derived from the Constitution, at least here in the United States. Okay? Now, so an easy way of thinking about it is you have the Constitution at top, you have statutory law, then you have common law, which is the principle of interpreting statutory law and the Constitution and applying it to the system. It's like how we come up with our guidelines. Why would we need case law if we have the law written in the Constitution and statutory law? Simply because we cannot agree with what the law says or what the Constitution says. So we have empowered the courts to decide this for us, to help guide us through this. And over the last 200 years, it is built up into a common law framework that is still affecting us to this day. Now let's talk briefly about the structure of the court. There are two types of courts. There are Article 1 courts. Article 1 being the article of the Constitution that shows that outlines the role and responsibilities and limitations of Congress. And Article 3 courts, which is the same thing, but for the judiciary. Article 1 courts, in Article 1, it invests Congress to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. These tribunals are typically, say your grandmother has a dispute about her Social Security. You may go to a tribunal to get it fixed. And they're generally review agencies. They have a lot of oversight based from Congress rather than from the Supreme Court. Okay. Article 3 courts have 3 tiers. At the bottom, we have 94 district courts. These have a single judge in the courtroom and can do jury. When typically you think of a court or you see a court expressed on TV, it is a trial court, which is also known as a district court, at least in the federal system. Now, these courts are, above them are 13 courts of appeal with a panel of 3 judges, no jury. If you do not like a decision from a district court, you can ask for an appeal, and according to the Constitution, you get it. You have a right to an appeal. So, the facts of the case will be brought up to these judges. They will review it. They will hear arguments. They will make a decision. Either they will say, for a reason of procedure, they will say, this is not done right, do a retrial, or they'll reverse the decision. Now, say you are not satisfied with that, then you can try to go to SCOTUS, the highest court of the land, where the buck stops. It has, of course, 9 justices, and they, unlike appeals court, they can choose what cases they receive. Here is a brief diagram of it. The Supreme Court, state court, trial court, that's all for the states. States have a parallel system to the federal court. While it might not look exactly like this, like for instance, Texas has 2 Supreme Courts, one that covers civil law, the other that covers criminal law. You still would have to work your way up from a trial to an appeal to the Supreme.
As does Oklahoma.
As does Oklahoma. I haven't been in Oklahoma for that long, so I didn't know that. Good to know. Okay. Say you wanted to bring a violation of a state court to SCOTUS. In order to do that, you have to work your way up through the state system. And then, only after you've seen the state Supreme Court, can you then petition the U.S. Supreme Court. The reason that they do this is an issue of jurisdiction. Anyone can give an example of what a jurisdiction would be when you think of it, of the word.
Like an area.
Exactly, yeah. It's an area in which you have authority over, so that you're not stepping on each other's toes. Our definition is the authority of a court to hear and determine cases. Congress has decided the federal court's structure and jurisdiction. So, that previous slide, Congress at any time can do away with district courts. They can do away with the courts of appeals. The only thing that we have to have is the Supreme Court, and they can change the makeup of that as well. SCOTUS, however, has original jurisdiction. And the example of original jurisdiction of SCOTUS is matters of the Constitution, violations of federal law, controversies between states, disputes between parties from different states, suits by or against each other, between parties from different states, suits by or against the federal government, foreign governments and treaties, admiralty and maritime laws, and U.S. diplomats. Article 3 lays out all of these as its original jurisdiction. Can anyone think of what a non-original jurisdiction is going to be? An example of non-original jurisdiction is all those cases that come from the states. Originally, SCOTUS was not allowed to hear them, or could only hear them in very certain reasons. And over the years, especially a little bit prior to, since the 14th Amendment, that jurisdiction has expanded, thanks to the 14th Amendment.
Jared, let me say something on that really quickly, okay? Original jurisdiction means a court hears the facts of the case, okay? And so in the Constitution, the Supreme Court is given certain things they can hear the facts of the case in. It has always had appellate jurisdiction to hear how the law was interpreted, but in some cases, Marbury versus Madison, for example, the Congress said, oh, you have to hear these cases, and the Supreme Court said, no, we don't. In the Constitution, we have this as our original jurisdiction where we hear the facts. Everything else is appellate in nature, okay? Where they hear from the states and through the system of cases through the federal system. Does that make sense? Okay.
Also, briefly, federal law is a very specialized kind of law. Anyone think of a federal law that would bring your average everyday person to a district court? If it was a criminal district court or criminal case, the biggest one would be treason. If you are tried for treason, you are going before a district court. Then drug trafficking. In the last century, there's been a really big amount of a caseload for criminal districts, criminal federal cases. A little less interesting, depending, is violations of security law. So anything that has to do with banking, stocks, taxes, that is all federal. And you do not want to get into that because that is a very expensive type of crime. And last is violations of interstate commerce. Federally, this is how the federal government has influence is through interstate commerce laws. So anything that goes over state lines can be considered a federal crime. Examples, and probably more important, of civil federal cases would be civil suits based on civil rights. So if your employer violates your rights, you can go before a district judge and say, they have harmed my civil rights. I am seeking damages for this. Results are getting back in. Good. Another one that's frequent is First Amendment violations. Those are all handled because they have to do with constitutional issues. And another one, which is not as interesting, but still pretty interesting, are cases that involve two people from different states. If I, from being now from Oklahoma, went to Texas and punched someone, and they're from Texas, have I broken an Oklahoma law, or have I broken a New Mexico or a Texas law? No, especially if I go back over state lines. Those for easily are handled civilly through the federal system. Now, back to that law I was talking about earlier. I'm going to give you a hypothetical that will allow you to understand the appeals process a little bit better. Okay, we have two legal cases. The facts of the cases are the same. A man and his dog are in a park. The man is feeding his dog a piece of bread, and a duck comes up and attacks the man. And attacking the man, he has injured the man and his dog, and he stole the bread. So the man sues the duck under local state law. And in each of these cases, the men win. However, what is different is what they were awarded. What was the damages? In the first case, the man gets both his medical and his dog's medical bills paid for by the duck. In the second case, the man is awarded damages for just his damages. Can anyone explain why this might be? Same law, same case, same details, different outcomes. Oh, okay.
The dog, the dog?
Dog and two either case. Yes, yes. Both men, it was both men correct. Same case. Same detail. Any others? Huh?
Up here.
Right here.
It's fire. But yes, it was just because the judge decided that the law, interpreted damages to be, in one case, damages to the man, and in the other, damages to both the man and the dog. It was up to the judge's discretion only. Now, the second devious duck appeals the case because he's talking to his duck friend, as ducks do. Talk about, hey, I got this bread. It only cost me such and such. You should do this too. The other duck's like, well, I did the same thing, but like I have to pay even more for it. So the duck who paid more, who paid for the dog, is upset because the law will apply differently to him. Okay. So the duck decides, as is his constitutional right, to appeal this decision. Goes to the appeals court. Based on the law and what I told you, in your opinion, should this duck, should he win his appeal? Should he not have to pay for the dog there?
Dog.
Both opinions. Why? Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone crowed up here?
I like ducks.
No one's ever crowed up in this hypothetical.
Eric's for that.
Eric. Eric.
Yeah.
So let's say the duck loses his case. And so the judges on this panel 3 come up, write an opinion based upon it. This opinion is now known as Duck v. Man. And it says, when applying this law, damages means damages both to the person and the property of the person. So from now on, whenever ducks are attacking people for their bread in a park, they have to pay for whatever they mess up. This is the doctrine of stare decisis. Stare decisis basically says we are looking for precedent. This is now precedent. Whenever we look at this case or a similar case, we apply it. Okay. Now, let's say this duck is upset even more. And it's not even about the money anymore, it's the principle of the matter. So he's like, okay, I want to take this all the way to SCOTUS. So, first, the case must exhaust all other options. So before this duck can bring his case to SCOTUS, he has to also go to fumble Supreme Court and not get what he wants from it. Okay, so he finished it, really angry. He's thrown thousands and thousands of dollars just to set this precedent that he wants. He will then submit a writ of cert. This is a request that the Supreme Court orders a lower court to send up the record of the case for review. If you ever want to do constitutional law, this is a very important concept. Very important concept to understand anyway. So the writ is sent up, the cases are brought there. The justices are all sitting in a room reviewing this, and then they'll have a vote whether or not this constitutes enough of an issue where we should speak on it. Now, in reality, judges aren't going to listen to a duck's opinion or even let them do a writ of cert. But let's say similar law has been passed all over the nation. So, and now all these other appeals courts are asking, we need clarification. And some it's one way, and others it's others. We need clarification from SCOTUS. Tell us what does the Constitution, what does federal law say on this? Give us your guidance. So, 4 of the 9 justices must vote to accept the case. This is called the rule of 4. If they get the 4, the petitioner will then be asked to write a brief putting forth his or her legal case concerning the issue on which the court grants review. And then the party known now as the respondent will do so as well. They will read the petitioner's brief and then they will respond to that brief. There also may be amicus curiae. Oh, I'm terrible at Latin. Which are briefs from a person or group who is not party to an action, but has a strong interest in the matter. So as an example, say there's a bread line, and they're upset because all these ducks attacking people is giving bread a bad name. So they'll write a brief, they'll send it to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS will look at it and they will consider their legal arguments. Also, let's say there is a duck law that says, hey, we have rights. We think it's our right to take bread from people. And the Constitution somehow says that is so. So they will also submit their briefs to them. The court will then hold oral argument, which is where 2 lawyers will one or the other be grilled and questioned by SCOTUS. Originally, this process was more like a speech where they just give out the facts. But in the last century, it's changed to more of an inquisitorial process. Then, when oral arguments are done, the judges will go into a room, only them, and they will go to conference to discuss. They will discuss the merits of both sides until they decide to hold a vote. If the majority vote, whatever way the majority vote, that side will get to write the official opinion. Typically, I believe it is if the Chief Justice is on the winning side, the Chief Justice chooses who writes, and if they are not, the most senior judge on that side will choose who writes. They will then do a back and forth. The person who writes the opinion will typically send out copies of it before draft and get opinions and try to keep the votes that they want. And then they have a final opinion. That will be the official opinion. That will be the case law. there are also concurring and dissenting opinions. So let's say Justice Kavanaugh says, hey, I agree that ducks should be able to get bred. But I'm agreeing on it because they're right, not as the court saying that that's how the law was written. So he will say, I agree, but, and he'll bring out his reason. And then there's also dissenting. Dissenting opinions are the opposite of a concurrent opinion. I disagree, and here's why. Dissenting opinions are important because in many cases, they will outline ways in which if a similar case comes up, it will show you what are the judges considering and what arguments should I make as a lawyer to get them to side with me. Okay, now, how many of you are going to law school or want to go to law school? Of you who want to go to law school or have gone to law school, who wants to be a Supreme Court justice or a federal judge? Dr. Rowland?
Great job. You really want that job.
All right. We'll begin by talking about how a federal judge is chosen. Okay. This is from any level. First, there needs to be a vacancy. Either someone is retired or someone is dead, because once you get this gig, you have it for life unless you're impeached. A lot of judges have been impeached. A lot more than you would think. Second, the president will ask whatever district you're in, or whatever states are under your appeals court, your circuit, they will ask the senators to make recommendations. Senators will go, they'll send a list to the president will then look at it, review it, and also get the opinion of the ADA, American Board Association, Bar Association, about their opinions on who would make a good judge. Then the president will make a nominee. He won't announce it, but he will send the nominee to the home senators and ask them, is this acceptable? If it is, the senator will send the president a blue slip. It's just a blue form, they call it blue slip. And if the president doesn't receive this, generally, they won't accept, they won't put out that nomination. It's like a little senatorial veto on the process. But say that all happens. Then Dr. Rowlett from the Oklahoma senators, like Dr. Rowlett. And they want her to be a nominee. Then the Senate Judiciary Committee will make evaluations. They'll have the FBI do a very thorough background check. They will interrogate her, question her, to go before the committee and answer questions back and forth. Then they will write a report, and then the report will be sent out to the rest of the Senate, and the Senate will hold a vote. If Dr. Rowlett wins the majority, she is then now a federal judge, lifetime appointment. She will never have to elect close again. Good for her.
And I'll get to wear robes all day.
Very good. Almost more ropes for this. Decided not to. Okay. Now, there are some things that we should discuss when we talk about judicial selection. Traditionally, it was not a very contentious process. It was basically almost a rubber stamp, even for SCOTUS judges. But in recent years, there have been issues. Most notably is the Merrick Garland, who was nominated in 2016. The Senate, despite him having an outstanding record in approving the ADA, decided not to allow it. And this was entirely for political reasons. Instead, that seat went to Justice Kavanaugh, who while having good record, did not have the best record, and also had his own controversy. Who here was aware enough politically to remember Justice Kavanaugh? Foundation. What were your feelings about it?
If I remember right, he had some allegations against him, I think involving sexual assault or something like that. I think it's, as in the Supreme Court especially, but in courts in general, you shouldn't have criminals being judges. It just makes sense. Even if they're just, even if they are allegations with minimal proof, which I don't remember what the case was with him, but, seems, sketchy.
So you're saying a nominee, if there's a little smoke around the nominee, we best not because it might get fired. Just be the same. Okay. Valid. Then we have Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who was approved and nominated by President Trump. Amy Coney Barrett did not have the most stellar approval from the ABA. That she was a good judge, but not the best. Not what we expect from a SCOTUS judge. So, as an example of, we'll bring up two, who were very political. Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg. Both of them polar opposite, but very political in their ideology. The thing they shared, though, is they have a stellar judicial record. They came from the best schools, which all three of these did. They come from some of the best schools, but they were very seasoned. The cases they saw, the cases when they were lawyers that they presented were all very impactful. They were the cream of the crop. Amy Coney Barrett, not so much. Great lawyer, deserves to be a federal judge. In some opinions, not a SCOTUS judge. All three of these, maybe not Brett Kavanaugh, but in each of these cases, it was a very political and partisan process. Something we had before had not been used to seeing. This partisanship has, in some ways, jeopardized the people's trust in the court, which is not good, because we expect the court to be a little bit political. They have their ideologies, their people, but they should be as impartial when it comes to deciding a case as possible. Because why? Why is impartiality important? Not a biased decision. You don't want a biased decision with a school, because the court makes important decisions, but the court cannot enforce those decisions. The court, as Alexander Hamilton said in a Federalist paper, I think 14, the court has neither the sword nor the purse. Once they make a decision, they need the support of the people and they need support of the institutions in order to enforce it. Without that, it's useless. Recently, briefly, I want to let you on my time. I want to discuss the court's new. While we have been talking about the federal court and the federal system, and I'm sure you are all very aware of how impactful the court can be on you in your day-to-day lives. Generally, you will not have interactions with the federal court, but you will have interactions with other courts. And all the other institutions and all the other branches, the court system is the one that you will have the most interaction with in your day-to-day life. Courts are the ones who handle our marriages, our divorce, Adam, whenever he attacks me. All of this is handled by the courts. And also, very briefly, Your interactions may not just be with the courts, it will also be with pseudo court institutions such as arbitration or mediation.